Community comes together to support the fight against racial injustice. I want to take a second to talk about one thing we can do to ensure our voices are heard. Not tomorrow, but now. Have your voices heard in terms of what kind of future we want by taking the 2020 census today at 2020Census.gov? Now, folks, let me help you out. The census is a count of everyone living in the country. It happens once every 10 years. It is mandated by the U.S. Constitution. The thing that's important is that the census informs funding, billions of dollars, how they are spent in our communities every single year. I grew up in Clinton Park in Houston, Texas, and we wanted new parks and roads and a senior citizen center. Well, the census helps inform all of that and where funding goes. It also determines how many seats your state will get in the U.S. House of Representatives. Young black men and young children of color are historically undercounted, which means a potential loss of funding for services that helps our community. Folks, we have the power to change that. We have the power to help determine where hundreds of billions in federal funding go each year for the next 10 years. Funding that can impact our community, our neighborhoods, and our families and friends. Folks, responses are 100% confidential and can't be shared with your landlord, law enforcement, or any government agency. So please, take the 2020 census today. Shape your future. Start at 2020Census.gov. All right, folks, we've been to focus on the census for the past month because we are rapidly approaching the deadline when they're going to start compiling information. Now, we've laid out in many cases, again, why it matters, how important it is, and what it means to our community. Joining us right now is Marilyn Stevens. She is the Assistant Regional Census Manager 2020. Certainly glad to have you here, Marilyn. How you doing?
Thank you, Roland. It's so good to see you again. You probably don't remember, we met a long time ago when you were in Chicago, and you were so gracious when you were first there, and we met you to talk about the census, and so you've been a champion for a very long time.
Well, it's all about what is constitutionally mandated. It also impacts us financially. I got to ask you this here in terms of, so where do we stand in terms of the door knocking? I know there was a ruling earlier this week. Will the door knocking continue past the deadline? I think it was it September 30th? What's the status on the count?
Right now, our mission is to complete our field operation by September 30th. So we are visiting non-responding households. We're also making telephone calls to non-responding households, and we are still encouraging people to respond online or to call our toll-free number and respond by phone.
So when you say you are going back to knock on the doors of non-responding households, how did you even arrive at those non-responding households?
Well, you know, in a census, we go with self-response. So we send you information to participate in the census. We started that on March 12th. You had an online, telephone, and mail option for the first time in history. So the pandemic slowed us down a little bit, but by August the 11th, we took a look at all of the addresses that had not responded at all. And so we dispatched our huge workforce to go to knock on those doors and to secure those interviews from those non-responding households.
So you're going back. How many times do you go back to the house? So let's say they didn't respond the first time. Let's say they don't respond again. Right. I mean, do you only go back one time, or do you go back 3 or 4 times?
Right. We're going to make 6 attempts on that household. We're also going to see if we can get an interview from a neighbor, a building manager, homeowners association, but our first attempts are really to the primary household to get them to respond. And when we come, we're going to leave a notice of visit if no one answers the door. And that notice of visit will say, the Census Bureau has been here to interview your family for the 2020 census that is required by law. We may come back again today. However, if you respond within 2 days of receiving this notice online at 2020Census.gov or by phone at 844-330-2020, we will not come back.
Now, how many people do you have out in the field who are doing the work?
Well, we have close to 300,000 enumerators knocking on doors. Also, we're also taking a look at telephone numbers. So some of you will receive a telephone call and not a personal visit. So we're securing interviews by telephone as well as personal visits.
And so you have those numbers. And again, when you say by September 30th, the court ruling, what happened? Do you simply wait to see if that gets appealed, if it goes somewhere else? Because according to the court ruling, folks were supposed to continue being counted past September 30th.
Well, our instruction is to continue the work, and that's why we're continuing to make telephone calls to households. We're continuing to visit households. Our online instrument is open so that you can still respond online. Our call centers are open from 7 a.m. to 2 a.m. in the morning every day. So until we're told something differently, we will continue to secure our interviews for every household in the nation.
Also, just there was another ruling in terms of that stated that folks who are undocumented must also be counted. And so when you talk about counting, are you required to count everyone?
We count everyone until we're told differently. With my 22 years with the Census Bureau, we count all persons without distinction. People would ask, what are the requirements for being in the census? I said breathing on U.S. soil on April 1st of 2020.
And so look, that's whether you live in an apartment, live in a house, whether you're homeless, and also the hard to reach people. How are you also doubling back for the hard to reach people? And from your numbers right now, what's the highest penetration rate do you have, and then what's the lowest? Where do you still need help in folks responding?
Well, traditionally, minority communities have a strong mistrust of government. So there's always a challenge in the Black community. But we are soliciting help from our partners. We have more than 400,000 partners nationwide, faith-based partners, elected officials, community partners, and it's all hands on deck, business partners. And they're all really working hard for this last-ditch efforts. They're having caravans because we're in the pandemic and we're doing so many things virtually. So they're having census caravans through low-responding neighborhoods. Some cities are having raffles to get people to respond. All of the superintendents for all the school districts nationwide are constantly sending messages home to parents to say, please be counted, do it today. So there's going to be an all-out effort to get people to be counted.
And again, not much time left, 19 days. And are you also, are those enumerators, are they also working 7 days a week? Are they working Sunday through Saturday?
Yes, we are working 7 days a week. Someone called me on Monday and said, there's an enumerator that seemed to be in my neighborhood. It's Labor Day. I said, we're working 7 days a week to fulfill our constitutionally mandated mission to ensure that everyone is counted.
All right, then. Marilyn Stevens, we surely appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for always being a wonderful census partner. All
right, thank you very much. Folks, got to go to a break. We come back, we'll chat with Mark Morial, who is the president, CEO of the National Urban League. Back on Roland Martin Unfiltered.
It's rough out there. People are looking for change, for answers. One answer is at your fingertips, the 2020 Census. Census takers will be visiting households to make sure we are counted. Because an undercounted community could miss out on billions of funding for schools, healthcare, and job assistance each year for the next 10 years. Too much is at stake. Respond online today.
Shape your future. Start here at 2020Census.gov.
Folks, joining us now is Mark Morial, President and CEO of the National Urban League. Mark, glad to have you back on Roland Martin.
Hey,
Unfiltered.
Roland, great to be with you. And once again, congratulations on Roland Martin Unfiltered. You're greatly admired and respected for bringing truth to the community. Thank you very much.
I appreciate it, sir. Thank you so very much. Proud of becoming head of the Urban League. You, of course, were mayor of New Orleans. You saw firsthand how important the census was when people actually filled it out. So give up folks an understanding again.
Historically, yeah, I've had, this is really my fourth census. In 1990, I was a member of the city's complete count committee. Of course, in 2000, I was president of the U.S. Conference of Mayors while I was mayor of New Orleans and led the effort to ensure that all of our people were counted in New Orleans in 2000. In 2010, I had a chance to serve as President Obama's chairperson of the National Census Advisory Council. This year, we've created the Black Census Roundtable to hold the census accountable and to encourage our community to participate in the census. So where this is today is we, of course, are the lead plaintiff in one of the lawsuits against the Census Bureau. And we received from Judge Lucy Cole of the Federal District Court in California a temporary restraining order which requires the census to continue counting as long as that restraining order is in effect. What happened here, Roland, is that at the advent of COVID, the Census Bureau suspended its operations and delayed its field or door knocking operations for a significant period of time. We called on them at the time to extend the door knocking period past its original deadline, which was August 31st. And they did that by extending it to the end of October. Then they came back and unilaterally decided to cut 30 days off of the door knocking period. And our concern is that that act will cause many Americans, many Black Americans, many brown Americans, many poor Americans to be uncounted in this census. Because what they've done is they've taken what was originally an 8-week door knocking time frame and crunched it into just 4 or 5 weeks. So that court decision stands now. There's another hearing in the Federal District Court in California next week where we are requesting a permanent injunction or preliminary injunction to prevent Census Bureau from discontinuing the count. What this is about is Census should do everything possible, everything in its power, everything possible to make sure that all people are counted, particularly in a COVID environment, particularly in a situation where door knocking is difficult because people need to remain safe and healthy. And so we are going to continue to push and press. Now, in addition to that, Roland, our community, we've got to remind, encourage, cajole, and push our community to participate in this census because it's about political power and it's about money.
And again, talk from that perspective of mayor. You were in that seat when you had to make budget cuts, when you had to make priorities, where spending comes from. And the reality is when you were looking for resources, look, when you came to D.C., they pulled out those census tracts to determine exactly what New Orleans should and should not get.
You're so right, Roland. The census count is used to determine how much money cities, counties, and school districts receive with respect to many programs. The SNAP or food stamps program, the Community Development Block Grant program, workforce dollars, school lunch dollars. The formula to determine how much money goes into a given county or a given city or even into a given neighborhood is determined by the count that takes place in the census. So it's crucial that we are counted, not to mention reapportionment, not only of congressional seats, state legislative seats, councilmanic seats, county commissioner seats. In states where judges are elected by districts, the judiciary depends indeed on the census. So this is so important. We can't sleep this. We can't sleep this census, particularly in this environment, because we go into a round of reapportionment in 2021 and 2022, where right now we do not have a Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act, and this would be the first time to protect us. Now, we're going to fight hard, certainly, and this election so critical to make sure that we get a new Voting Rights Act passed, hopefully in early 2021.
When you talk about representation, I mean, just the other day I saw where Texas finally stepped up and decided to spend money on a census because folks there realized, oh, damn, we actually could gain 3 seats in Congress based upon population shift. But if folks don't get counted, we stand to lose those 3 seats. That's political power in the nation's capital. That's why, I mean, I was highly critical of Governor Abbott as well as Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick saying, what the hell are y'all doing? Not spending money on the census hurts Texas.
Hurts Texas, hurts the people of Texas. And there are many states where governors and some attorney generals have been narrow-minded, thoughtless about this. Look, every state should fight. Every governor, every mayor, every county exec should fight to make sure all of their people are fully and completely counted. And so I want to remind people in the community that the census is a place-based, and I hope you can help us by emphasizing this, a place-based count. So you have to count everybody in that dwelling, whether they are related to you or not. It's not each family gets a census form. It's one census form that you fill out per dwelling, per house, per apartment. So if your sister lives with you and she has 2 children, they've got to be counted on the very same form. If your mother, your father, or maybe an older aunt lives with you, they've got to be counted on your form. In 2010, many Black children, many Latinx children were missed in the census to some extent because people were not aware to include them. And it's important to include them. And because it's confidential, people should not be concerned about, quote, whether they have restrictions in their leases and they might get in trouble, because that information you give the census taker is going to remain confidential with the census. Your landlord is not going to get that information.
Obviously, civil rights groups have been very involved in this. Churches have been involved in this as well, in terms of getting the information out. Why is it so hard to count Black folks? And how do you counter it?
Historic distrust, and how in our community we have many people who are very civically engaged, very activist oriented. We have people who don't trust the system, and they have great justification, the historic legacy of exclusion. We've got to overcome that by understanding this is a tool of empowerment. The count is not a count just to know how many people are in the country, although that's important. You need to know how many children, how many seniors. You need to understand how many men, how many women, how many people of each race in each city, every county, every state. It helps in the formulation and the shaping of public policies and solutions and the distribution of money and the distribution of power. So it shouldn't be as hard. Now, I will say this. I don't think that the Census Bureau has historically done everything they can do in order to ensure that Black and brown people are counted. I've recommended for the last 2 census cycles that Census engage in funded partnerships with churches and unions and community-based groups so that they can go throughout the community. They've got a voluntary partnership program. Okay, that's great, but they need to do more to ensure that people are counted, and they need to do more funded partnerships. And it's not just about paid advertising. And as you know, we have been in a battle to ensure that Black-owned media get a fair shake, that media that focuses on Black communities and brown communities get a fair shake in the census spend.
Well, I mean, that point about reaching those hard-to-get people, I mean, again, it's folks who know the communities, where people and the people in the community that they actually trust. I mean, it's a little hard to send somebody into a community who folks have no relationship with.
And have never seen. The communities are based on trust. Elections work that way. The census works that way. Our communities are based on trusted voices, established leaders, grassroots leaders, community leaders, public housing resident leaders, union leaders, leaders of community clubs and community organizations, faith-based leaders, local elected officials, the whole network of people that people have chosen and that people support to be their leaders. They are the ones that can help. So I'm asking now, we're going to keep the pressure. Our lawsuit is viable. It's strong. It has great merit. I certainly want to thank Kristen Clark and the Lawyers Committee. They are representing the National Urban League and a coalition of other organizations in this litigation. I might add, Roland, in addition to the litigation we filed against the Census Bureau, we've also filed litigation against the Postal Service and to ensure that the gains and the efforts to suppress and undermine the work of the Postal Service so they can do the job they have to do to make sure that every ballot gets to the clerk, gets to the Elections Commissioner's office on time. So we are being assertive. We're going to be aggressive. We're going to push as hard as we can to make sure that the people are protected and the people's rights are affirmed.
Mark Morial, President, CEO, National Urban League. I certainly appreciate it. Thank you so very much.
Always, Roland. Thank you.
Alpha's always leading. Thanks a bunch.
8-5, brother.
Yes, sir. Got to go to a break. We come back. We'll talk with Janetta B Cole, National Congress of Negro Women, next on Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Hi, I'm Angela Bassett, and you've got one vote. Use it.
As our community comes together to support the fight against racial injustice, I want to take a second to talk about one thing we can do to ensure our voices are heard. Not tomorrow, but now. Have your voices heard in terms of what kind of future we want by taking the 2020 census today at 2020Census.gov? Now, folks, let me help you out. The census is a count of everyone living in the country. It happens once every 10 years. It is mandated by the U.S. Constitution. The thing that's important is that the census informs funding, billions of dollars, how they are spent in our communities every single year. I grew up in Clinton Park in Houston, Texas, and we wanted new parks and roads and a senior citizen center. Well, the census helps inform all of that and where funding goes. It also determines how many seats your state will get in the U.S. House of Representatives. Young black men and young children of color are historically undercounted, which means a potential loss of funding for services that helps our community. Folks, we have the power to change that. We have the power to help determine where hundreds of billions in federal funding go each year for the next 10 years. Funding that can impact our community, our neighborhoods, and our families and friends. Folks, responses are 100% confidential and can't be shared with your landlord, law enforcement, or any government agency. So please, take the 2020 census today. Shape your future. Start at 2020Census.gov.
What's up? This is Aldous Hodge, and you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Hey, everybody, it's your girl, Sherry Shepherd, and you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered. Hey, Roland.
This is Tim Story, director of Shaft. You're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered. What up, y'all? This is Method Man, Mighty Wu-Tang Clan. You watching Uncle Roland Martin, and the show is Unfiltered. Make sure y'all tune in. Laura Ingram, you suck.
All right, black women have always been involved in issues in our community. That includes the census as well. Joining us right now is Dr. Janetta B Cole. She's the president and chair, National Council of Negro Women. Dr. Cole, how you doing?
Oh, my brother, I am doing well. And you know, I want to thank you because you do such righteous work. You do the good Lord's work, and she's got plenty of it.
Well, we certainly appreciate it. We're all about doing the work and giving folks hell as much as we can. Let's talk about this here. Obviously, black women extremely focused on the election, but there are a number of organizations that have also been very focused on ensuring that we are counted in this census to ensure that our community gets the money that we richly deserve.
Well, I can tell you, at the National Council of Negro Women, we are unbelievably focused on two expressions of responsibility. One is the census. You know, we as black women, along with black men, have been unseen unappreciated, and uncounted. But the second focus is obviously on voting. We don't have a whole lot of time in order to get both of these tasks done. And I am particularly concerned, as all should be concerned, that this administration has shortened the amount of time for participation in the census. It is now the end of September. We are in a pandemic. Well, actually, we're in a couple of pandemics. But given what time we do have, we got to make haste, because as our brother, President Mark Morial, said so brilliantly, so convincingly, everything matters here. Our resources, our political power.
The ability to be able to count folks. One of the things that Mark said that I think people really do ignore is that when you talk about the census, everybody in the household counts. So, for instance, I've got two nieces who are being raised by me and my wife. They're not our biological children, but in our household, that's 4 people who should be counted, not just the 2 of us. And that's an important distinction because when we leave folks off, that's literally resources that we're leaving that we're leaving out, or that will simply go elsewhere.
And you know, my brother, this is so much at the heart of our community. We have always taken the notion of kinship to mean far more than, in quotes, blood. And so folk live with us. Folk live with us because we care about them. Folk live with us because they don't have any other place to live. This census must count every living African American, let's use the broader term, Black person, because we know that historically and historically, Black folk, brown folk, indigenous folk, immigrant folk have been undercounted. Think how much we're leaving on the table that could go to our schools, that could give us better roads, that in this pandemic could create better healthcare availability for us, not to mention those programs on which, no fault of our own, we have to depend. And so at the National Council of Negro Women, we are taking this so seriously that we are in a formal partnership with Fair Count. Now, you know our sister Stacey Abrams. So do I. After all, we were at Spelman College together. And when Stacey's road to the governorship was stolen, I mean in broad open daylight stolen, she started 2 organizations. She started Fair Fight to push back against voter oppression. I'm sorry, that is a good word, oppression, although it's usually called suppression. But she also founded Fair Count, an organization dedicated to making sure that underrepresented people are counted. And so we, in partnership with Fair Count, we have something called Sisters Count. Sisters count. We do count. And because we understand that historically and historically, Black women have often taken care not enough about themselves and a whole lot about others. And so we're urging our sisters to continue that tradition, except we need a little more self-care. But make sure that everybody in our household is counted. Talk to our neighbors. Tell everybody that you see. Make sure you're counted, because so much that we need, power and resources depend on it.
Last question for you, and that is, you know, obviously folks are knocking on doors, the ability to also use online and call as well. And I think one of the things that I've been saying to people, just like we talk about tied to voting, and that is, look, all you got to do is call 5 people. As an individual, you call 5, and if you know, look, there are more than 4,000 people who are watching right now on YouTube, who are people more than 1,000 on Facebook. Right there, if just the very people who are watching us live right now, just say I'm gonna call 5, that's 20,000 individuals or more who they can reach, and that's just how basic this is.
It is so basic. And I've got to say this, my bro, as I listened to your explanation at the beginning of this program, it could not be clearer. And so if we could just socially reproduce you and what you do. Of course, if I could clone you and spread you around the world, I know I'd have a better world. But everyone has the possibility to do exactly what you do on the Roland Martin Show, Unfiltered.
Well, we certainly appreciate it. Dr. Cole, it's always great to see you. Tell the best man I said what's up, my alpha brother. And y'all keep swinging.
Peace.
I appreciate it. Thank you so very much. Folks, got to go to a break. We come back. The power of the census, how it impacts voting. Oh, yeah, it does. And you want to understand that. That is next on Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Hey everybody, this is Sherry Shepherd. You're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered, and while he's doing Unfiltered, I'm practicing the wobble. Yes, I am. Because Roland Martin's the one, he will do it backwards, he will do it on the side. He messes everybody up when he gets into the wobble, because he doesn't know how to do it, so he does it backwards. And it messes me up every single time. So I'm working on it. I got it. You got Roland Martin.
Hi, my name is LaToya Luckett, and you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Mac Wilds, and you are watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
What's up, y'all? It's Ryan Destiny, and you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
What up, Lana Well, and you are watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Fill out your 2020 census and include everyone who lived with you as of April 1st. Kids, uncles, anyone. They don't even have to be family. Now remember, this count helps inform where billions in federal funding goes each year. So shape your future and start here at 2020Census.gov. There are 100 United States senators, 435 members of the House of Representatives, but those 435 House members are apportioned based upon population. Now, when you look at what's happening in this country, more than likely the Midwest part of the country, I'm talking about Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Ohio, Iowa, Illinois, those states, due to the shifting population, those states are likely going to be losing representation in Congress because they are losing population. Places in the South, in the Southwest, and the West are going to be gaining congressional seats. All of that is based upon the United States Census. Jorge Vasquez Jr. joins us right now. He is Program Director for Power and Democracy Program with the Advancement Project. Jorge, glad to have you in Roland Martin Unfiltered.
It's a pleasure to be with you, my brother.
When we start talking about politics, oftentimes when people talk about the census, they only talk in terms of how districts are drawn. So first, let's deal with that. Are districts drawn only on the congressional level, or is the census also used in states to draw the state representative and the state senators?
So it's drawn both. A lot of states depend on the federal system in deciding how they're going to draw their districts. Virginia is one of those states. New York is one of those states. Many states follow the federal system where you look to see how many people live in that place, because everyone has access to political power, right? Young people, old people, whether you're a citizen or not, it's important that we all have access to that elected official. And you want to make sure that each elected official is representing around the same amount of people.
And so, again, for the person who's watching, They just see, okay, that's my state rep, that's my state senate. But then when they think about that, I used to be represented by somebody, that's because likely after the last census, the lines were redrawn. People were shifted from one district to the other, depending upon how those lines were drawn. Gerrymandering plays a role in this as well. All of that is determined where people are because they are able to look at the concentration of how many blacks, how many whites, how many Latinos, how many Asians, how many Native Americans, how many men, how many women, how many people, lean this party or that party. They are extrapolating that data based upon looking at the census. How many people are upper middle class, how many people are poor? All of that data comes from this report.
You're absolutely right. What you're really touching on is the importance of accurate data. The census is critical for everything. It's critical. Businesses depend on it. Black and brown communities die by it. Think about today we live in a technologically advanced society where we have apps. People are used to using Uber, Lyft, different kind of mobile applications that know what addresses are there. Those addresses come from the Census Bureau. Information and data that businesses need to thrive depends on the Census Bureau. We both remember what it was like having cell phones, let's say 20, 30 years ago, and we remember what dropped calls was. That's because when you're on a cell phone towers use census data. If they believe 10,000 people live in a community, they're going to provide services for up to 10,000 people. But when you have 20,000 people in that community using that service and everyone's trying to use, a service that's built for 10,000, but you have 20,000, then you have call drops. Many of the viewers who may not be familiar with that might have been at an arena, may have been at a concert prior to COVID, and you're trying to upload something. Maybe you're at an airport and you're trying to, check an email, but it's slow. All of that has to do with census data.
Now, what else involved politics? First of all, I mentioned obviously how the lines are drawn. Now let's talk about the population shifts. As I said earlier, Texas realized, dang, we better jump on this thing because we could gain 3 seats. If we don't get this thing done right, we won't gain that power, and now we got to wait 10 years. As you look at the map there, any idea on how many potential seats will be shifting away from the Midwest, which has largely been white in this country, and shifting to the South, the Southeast, and the West?
Yeah, so there's certainly places where we could look at and say we're seeing an influx of people. And if everybody in those places count, then we're going to gain more congressional seats. So I think Florida should be one of those places. I think here in the DMV area, Virginia, Maryland, especially places where there's a huge immigrant population. We know that at least about 16 million homes are mixed status families where one person may not be a U.S. citizen in that home, usually either the mother or the father. But if you have a mother who's a U.S. citizen, a father who's not, and then you have a child who is, you have a family of 3. If one of those people are uncounted, then we're going to lose thousands of dollars. I mean, you touched on it earlier, but what we're talking about is just with looking at undocumented population, we're talking about losing potentially $8.5 billion annually. Just in Virginia alone, for each person that's undercounted, we lose $2,000. We know the census is for 10 years. That means we're going to lose $20,000 for each person that's undercounted in Virginia alone. Said differently, a family of 5 would lose $100,000. One quick thing that we could all do is, like you said, call 5 people. You call 5 people, those 5 people fill out the census, you just save, on average, your state $100,000. As you're aware, Drew Vertner Woodson Tandy said it best. He said he wanted our fraternity to stand out when it comes to affairs of the nation. As Black and brown people, as people who built this country, there is no more important national affairs than participating in the decennial census. The census is critical. It's about money, it's about power, it's about respect. When we're talking about politics, we're talking about whether or not a U.S. citizen is entitled to a non-English ballot. That's going to depend on census data. When we talk about schools and we talk about civil rights, we're talking about census data. When we talk about whether or not someone is being discriminated as an attorney, when I go into court, the judge wants to see census data. They don't want to hear that my client feels that they're being discriminated against. when we think about the school to prison pipeline, and we think about so many public schools under-resourced, it's because the census is for 10 years. And the largest undercount are children under 5. What that's saying is that children from 5 to 15 are going to lose resources that they need at these public schools. So from first grade to about a junior in high school, they're going to be underfunded. What happens when schools are underfunded? Jails become funded. And we know that political power is important because we know when our brothers and sisters are incarcerated that these prisons use prison gerrymandering and that they want those resources and they make sure our brothers and sisters who are incarcerated are counted. So we got to make sure that our communities are equally counted.
All right, then. Jorge Vasquez Jr. With the Advancement Project. We certainly appreciate it. Thank you so very much. And I always glad to see another Alpha brother on here.
Thank you.
All right. And for the rest of y'all, you Omegas and Kappas, I'm sorry, but, these things just happen. I mean, just, leadership is leadership. All right, Jorge, thank you so very much. Folks, not many days left to vote. I want y'all to focus on that. Pull the graphic up, please. It is 52 days until the election. One of the things that we have been doing is ensuring that you are registered to vote, but you can also go to vote.org. Now, remember, when it comes to the census, you can go to 2020Census.gov, or if you're also looking to check your registration, you can go right to vote.org right here to check your registration. You go to the bottom. What does it say right there? 2020 Census. And all you do is simply click that particular button there. Takes you to my2020Census.gov, which allows for you again to begin to fill out the questionnaire. This is how you start the questionnaire, and you log in, of course, with your 12-digit census ID. And so if you don't have the census ID, you can click this particular button right here, and then it begins to walk you through all of those steps. That's how simple and easy it is. And so, again, my2020Census.gov, you can go to that particular address to fill your census out. You can also go to 2020Census.gov to do so. And remember, you also can call. You can also call. And so you see all the responses on here that allows for you to be able to get the information. We've been explaining this now every single day and multiple times each week. I got to go back up to the top here. And again, how you can respond. Remember, when you do answer, your answers are not being accepted not being used in any way. They're not being given to any governmental agency, anything along those lines. That's not how they're being used. And so we want you to understand that we got to make sure it's on us. Look, we know we're being undercounted. So why don't we make sure that we get counted? And so you can do this you can do this online. You can do this by phone call. You can do this by mail as well. I am looking for the phone number right now that you can call to actually do the census as well. But again, go to 2020Census.gov, 2020Census.gov. Fill out your 2020 census and include everyone who lived with you as of April 1st. Kids, uncles, anyone. They don't even have to be family. Now remember, this count helps inform where billions in federal funding goes each year. So shape your future and start here at 2020Census.gov.